In the shadowed ridges of the Appalachian Mountains, there's a patch of land that locals avoid after sunset. They call it the Goins Hollow, a place where the soil itself seems sick, where birds refuse to sing, and where, according to the old men in town, a family once tore itself apart in a way no one should ever speak of. This is the story the county tried to erase, but pieces of it still bleed through newspaper archives, missing person reports, and the memories of those who swore they saw things no human should see. Opening scene: the sheriff's box. In 1978, a cardboard box labeled "Evidence Do Not Open" was found in the basement of the McCreary County Courthouse during renovations. Inside were 3 Polaroids of a burned farmhouse, a rusted pocket watch stopped at 3:11 a.m., and a single note in shaky handwriting. They're still here. The curse never left the hills. No record explained who wrote it. The sheriff who signed the tag, Goins, had died 20 years earlier. That discovery pulled a retired journalist named Harold Mercer back into a story he'd been warned to forget. Segment 1. The Forgotten Family. The Goins family had settled deep in the Appalachian frontier in the late 1800s. Census documents show a Matthias Goins, his wife Eleanor, and their 3 sons, Silas, Peter, and Roy. They farmed tobacco and hunted the ridges above Black Bear Creek. But by 1910, neighbors had stopped visiting entirely. When Mercer later interviewed descendants of nearby families, every account shared the same uneasy detail. They kept to themselves, but the light in their windows never went out. Even on moonless nights, you could see it. A sickly yellow glow like lanterns hung inside the walls. No one knew what the Goinses did for work after the crops failed, yet somehow they never seemed short on supplies. Then, in 1912, a mail carrier found dozens of dead crows strung along the fence posts leading to their property, wings spread, eyes gone. The town called it superstition, but children whispered it was a warning to stay out. Segment 2. The Disappearances. Between 1913 and 1919, 5 locals vanished near the hollow: 2 lumbermen, a peddler, a preacher, and a county surveyor. The sheriff's reports were thin. Unrecovered. Terrain unsafe for search. The only man who kept notes was Deputy Ellis Ward, whose journal surfaced decades later in a pawn shop in Corbin, Kentucky. Ward wrote that each disappearance coincided with a column of smoke rising from Goins Hollow, like a funeral pyre that burns but never ends. When the war ended in 1918 and soldiers returned home, curiosity turned to fear. People began moving away from the valley altogether. By 1923, Goins Hollow was abandoned, or so they thought. Segment 3. The Traveler's Account. A drifter named Calvin Mott filed a report in 1931 claiming he'd spent a night inside the old Goins house seeking shelter from rain. The following excerpt is from his statement, preserved in the Tennessee Valley Authority archives. There were voices under the floorboards. I thought maybe folks hid down there, but when I pried a plank up, there wasn't no crawl space, just dirt packed smooth like something had been buried and kept moving. The sheriff at the time dismissed Mott as drunk. 3 days later, a farmhand found Mott's belongings, soaked in creek mud, but Mott himself was gone. Segment 4. Mercer's Investigation. Jump to 1978 again. Harold Mercer, now a retired reporter from Lexington, recognized the sheriff's signature on the evidence box: Ezekiel Goins, grandson of the original Matthias. Mercer began combing through microfilm at the state archives and found something the county historians had missed: a 1901 obituary for a Dr. Walter Ridgway, a physician who'd visited the Goins property for consultation and was later found drowned in his own cistern. The death was ruled suicide, but next to that obituary was a half-page advertisement: Goins Tonic for vital restoration. It listed a P.O. box in the same county. Mercer suspected the family had been selling something. Maybe herbal medicine, maybe something worse. When he interviewed surviving locals, one phrase recurred: they were trying to live forever. Segment 5. The Tape. In 1979, Mercer received a package with no return address. Inside was a reel-to-reel tape and a note from someone who's heard them sing. The audio, now analyzed by forensic experts, contains faint hymn-like chanting recorded from inside a structure. At 1 minute 43 seconds, a man's voice says, "Keep it sealed. Keep the blood quiet." A sudden metallic shriek follows, like rusted hinges or an animal screaming. Then silence. When the FBI lab cleaned up the audio, they found a repeating hum beneath the chant. Not electrical interference, but a heartbeat pattern, matching 40 beats per minute. Whatever was recorded, it wasn't mechanical. Segment 6. The Return to Goins Hollow. Mercer and a young photographer, Dana Lee, drove to the site that winter. According to Dana's later testimony, it felt wrong the second we crossed the tree line. No birds, no wind. Just pressure, like the air itself was holding its breath. They found the remnants of the farmhouse, a foundation swallowed by vines, a stone well capped with a rusted grate, and the remains of an iron stove. Mercer took soil samples. The ground near the well was black, oily, and warm to the touch despite freezing air. That night, they camped by the car. At 3 a.m., Dana woke to what she described as singing under the earth. Low, wordless, but perfectly rhythmic. When they fled at sunrise, the hood of their car bore hand-shaped prints in ash. Segment 7, the official cover-up. When Mercer attempted to submit his findings to the Lexington Herald, the editor pulled the story. A week later, Mercer's apartment was broken into. All tapes and photographs were gone. Police ruled it a burglary, but nothing else was taken. Not even his television or cash. The only thing left on his desk was a Bible, open to Genesis chapter 19, verse 17. Escape for thy life. Look not behind thee. Mercer moved west and never spoke of the Goins again. He died in 1992. But in 2006, his nephew found the first draft of his unpublished manuscript, The Hollow That Hungered, hidden behind a false panel in a dresser. Segment 8, Modern Investigations. When paranormal researcher Elena Price revisited the site in 2015, GPS and radio equipment malfunctioned within a half-mile radius. Thermal cameras captured what she called heat blooms rising from underground, brief flashes shaped like human outlines that vanished in under 2 seconds. The soil still measured 98 degrees Fahrenheit, identical to human body temperature. Local historians have since speculated that the Goins family practiced ritual preservation, not of the body, but of presence. They believed the human voice could bind a soul to earth if the chant never ended. If true, that might explain why hikers today still report hearing whispers through the hollow when the wind stops. 100 years have passed, and yet the Goins Hollow remains fenced, unmarked, and unclaimed land. Satellite images show faint circular scars in the soil, concentric, like ripples frozen in dirt. Locals say if you stand there long enough, you'll feel a vibration under your boots, steady, slow, and patient, as if something beneath the ground still remembers your name. I'm not here to tell you whether curses are real, only that every story leaves an echo. And in that hollow of the Appalachian Mountains, the echo still answers. This recording was recovered from a house sale in 2006. The seller claimed the drawer had been sealed since the early 90s. What you're about to hear has never been aired publicly until now. Segment 9, The Dresser Secret. When Mercer's nephew, Thomas Beale, opened the warped dresser, the first thing he noticed was the smell, cedar and dust, tinged with iron. Behind the false panel lay a waterproof envelope, a small notebook, and 3 undeveloped film canisters. The notebook, dated October 1981, contained Mercer's field entries. He described returning once more to Goins Hollow after the original break-in, convinced the evidence he'd gathered had been confiscated by someone inside the county office. There's a new fence line where the foundation was, Mercer wrote. Fresh wood. Unpainted. No sign of logging vehicles. Someone wants the area marked but not seen. Half the pages are missing, torn clean along the spiral binding. The final legible line reads, "If anyone finds this, listen for the hum." It's not the wind. Segment 10, The Modern Archivist. In 2021, investigative archivist Marianne Cole began digitizing Beale's donation to the State Library. Her log notes reveal something odd. Every time she scanned a page from Mercer's 1981 notebook, the image file produced a background hiss, even though the scanner had no audio input. Spectrogram analysis of the noise showed a repeating pattern roughly matching the heart rate data found on Mercer's original reel-to-reel tape, 40 BPM. Cole described it in an interview. It was like the paper itself had static. When you flipped the page, it stopped. When the page was flat on the glass, it started again. 2 weeks later, Cole resigned from the project. Her final email to the archive director was a single sentence. "Please don't scan the last roll of film." Segment 11, The Photographs. Those film rolls remained sealed until our production team requested access under the Freedom of Information Act. Developed images reveal a fog-shrouded valley, the stone outline of a farmhouse, and something stranger, faint circular impressions in the earth, as if the soil had sunk evenly in perfect rings. Forensic geologists reviewing the prints couldn't agree on a cause. Compaction tests showed the ground had been disturbed repeatedly over decades, yet vegetation regrew in flawless symmetry each time. One expert compared it to an exhale frozen mid-breath. Segment 12, The Radio Call. During our own research trip to McCreary County, we recorded a call with retired park ranger Cliff Nolan. He was stationed near the old ridge in 1985. The place was quiet until sundown, Nolan said. Then you'd hear this low vibration, like distant thunder that never moved. I thought it was underground water until my compass started spinning. He paused before adding one more line. We got orders not to patrol there after dark. Straight from Frankfurt. No explanation. When asked who issued those orders, Nolan laughed softly. That's the thing. The signature was Ezekiel Goins. But he'd been dead 30 years. Segment 13, The Geological Survey. State geological maps list Goins Hollow as Zone A, unstable terrain, citing subsurface cavitation. Ground-penetrating radar from a 2018 survey recorded 4 vertical shafts descending nearly 40 feet each, connected by narrow tunnels. All were filled with sediment except the central pit, which reflected back a dense metallic mass at the 30-foot mark. When questioned, the County Historical Society denied knowledge of any mines or wells in that area. Yet an 1899 ledger from the Goins farm lists monthly purchases of iron rivets, pulley chain, and pitch. Whatever they built beneath their home wasn't for farming. Segment 14. The Interference. Our production's own experience mirrored Mercer's notes. Drones lost signal within seconds of crossing the ridge. Audio recorders captured rhythmic static even when powered off. One crew member reported hearing a choir through the headset, though nothing played. Back in the studio, the raw waveform of that interference revealed a pulse identical to the one Mercer logged a century ago. It wasn't random noise. It had pattern and depth, the way a human voice does before words form. Sound engineers nicknamed it the underground heartbeat. Segment 15. The County Files. A month later, our request for declassified sheriff's records arrived, a thin envelope marked incomplete. Inside were photocopies of property transfers showing that the Goins land had changed ownership 12 times between 1925 and 1975, each time reverting to state custody after the owner's sudden disappearance or mental breakdown. One affidavit from 1959 reads simply, "Unfit for habitation." Continuous humming. There was also a typed memo from the governor's office. Cease public inquiry into Goins tract, pending geological stabilization project. No such project ever took place. Segment 16. The Return to the Ridge. We visited the ridge line at midday. Temperature, 62 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind speed, negligible. The soil inside the fence still measured nearly body warm. There was a shallow indentation where the farmhouse foundation once stood, now filled with black moss. When our field microphone was lowered toward the earth, it captured a tone too low for human hearing. Slowed down and pitched to audible range, it resembled breathing, drawn out, patient, never stopping. Segment 17. The Local Preacher. In 1942, a circuit preacher named Reverend Niles Ward, believed to be a descendant of Deputy Ellis Ward, filed a single-page sermon under the title, "The Earth That Remembers." It warns against digging where voices rest. He claimed he'd seen the ground tremble like skin. No church ever booked him again. He died of natural causes in 1949, but townspeople buried him facing away from Goins Hollow per his will. Segment 18. The Echo. Back in the editing room, our producer layered Mercer's tape, Cole's scanner hiss, and our own field audio. When aligned by tempo, the 3 tracks synchronized perfectly, a single continuous pulse stretching over a century of recordings. Spectral analysis translated partial frequencies into phonetic shapes. The resulting pattern, when converted through speech software, produced 5 clear words. We remember who dug first. No one on the team wanted to listen a second time. Segment 19. The Disappearance of Dana Lee. Records show Dana Lee, Mercer's photographer, lived quietly in Oregon until 1988, when she vanished while hiking alone in the Cascades. Her last mailed postcard to a friend read, "It's here too." Same hum beneath the pine. Investigators found her camera submerged in a creek. The film, when developed, showed a dark valley under moonlight, not the Pacific Northwest landscape she'd been visiting, but unmistakably Goins Hollow. Segment 20. Present day. The hollow remains closed to the public, fenced and listed as ecological hazard zone. Yet satellite imagery still captures faint glows on certain nights, not fires, but heat signatures in concentric rings, appearing and fading in sequence. Locals say the air trembles before a storm. Geologists say it's underground gas expansion. But old families in the county whisper a single phrase when the hills go quiet. The Goins are breathing again. We've reached the end of every document we could find. Every file, every testimony, ends the same way, with a hum that never stops. Maybe it's geological. Maybe it's something older. Whatever it is, it's still moving beneath that soil. If you ever find yourself driving through McCreary County, there's a sign that reads, "Road ends ahead." Beyond it is a ridge that swallows compasses and memories alike. Locals say if you listen long enough, you'll hear the ground breathe. When you do, don't answer. For more than a century, one mystery has echoed through McCreary County, a family that vanished. A hum beneath the soil, and a trail of evidence that seems to breathe on its own. Tonight, we open the last surviving film reel left by Harold Mercer. Segment 21. The Reel. The canister, stored in a temperature-controlled vault, bore a handwritten label, Goins Hollow, test footage, July 1981. Archivists transferred the decaying 8mm film to digital format. The first frames show a daylight shot of a valley, the same hollow seen in the earlier photographs. Then, the camera pans down to the earth. Tiny tremors ripple through the soil. like the surface of a pond disturbed by wind. At frame 437, the picture jitters violently. For 2 seconds, the exposure flares, revealing faint rings of condensation rising from the ground. Thermal signatures invisible to the naked eye. Mercer's voice is heard, calm but strained. It's not sound. It's pressure. It's breathing through stone. The reel ends abruptly, followed by 3 seconds of blank film. Laboratory analysis found minute magnetic residue on the blank section, consistent with the frequency of the recorded hum. Proof that the film stock itself had been imprinted by vibration. Segment 22. The Scientific Re-Examination. In 2023, the University of Kentucky Department of Geophysics revisited the area with microseismic equipment. Their instruments confirmed a persistent low-frequency resonance centered exactly beneath the Goins property, emanating from 43 feet below the surface. No cavity large enough to generate that resonance was found. Dr. Lydia Cross, who led the study, described the anomaly. It behaves like a biological rhythm. Not tectonic, not mechanical. It pulses between 39 and 41 beats per minute and adjusts to barometric pressure, almost as if it's aware. Her full report was quietly archived and never released publicly. When asked why, Cross simply said, "Funding ended." Segment 23. The State Statement. A formal letter from the Kentucky Department of Natural Resources followed our inquiry. The Goins tract remains under restricted access due to unstable terrain and environmental risk. There are no ongoing investigations. Yet internal correspondence obtained through open records requests reveals continued energy mapping surveys conducted every equinox. Each report ends with the same closing line: resonance persists. Segment 24. The Sound Spreads. 3 counties away, residents have begun reporting similar low hums near abandoned mine shafts. Audio engineers compared the tones to Mercer's tape, an identical frequency profile. Whatever once stirred beneath Goins Hollow seems to be traveling through the limestone network under the mountains, spreading like a vibration carried by the bedrock itself. Power grid monitors have detected micro-fluctuations matching that rhythm, appearing simultaneously in sensors miles apart. There is no official explanation. Segment 25. The Psychological Aftermath. Interview transcripts from those who have spent prolonged time near the hollow show recurring symptoms. Irregular heart rate aligning with the hum, vivid auditory hallucinations described as whispered warnings, and in rare cases, temporary amnesia of the visit itself. Dr. Elaine Hughes, a clinical psychologist who reviewed the data, concluded, "The human brain is drawn to pattern and resonance. When exposed long enough, it sinks. Whether the hum is physical or imagined, it becomes part of you." Segment 26. Mercer's Legacy. Harold Mercer died before seeing his findings verified. On his gravestone, beneath his name, someone later etched 3 shallow concentric circles. Cemetery records show no authorization for the modification. No one admits to carving it. Thomas Beale, his nephew, maintains the stone each year. When we interviewed him, he said quietly, "Uncle Harold used to say every story leaves a heartbeat. If you stop listening, it stops too. Maybe that's mercy." Segment 27. Modern Observation. Our production team left an unattended recorder at the fenced perimeter for 24 hours. Out of the silence came a single moment, one pulse stronger than all the rest, followed by a faint echo repeating our device's own identification ping back to us, as if something below had heard the frequency and answered. We verified the hardware. No faults, no interference. Just a reply, perfectly timed. Segment 28. Closing narration. In every corner of Appalachia, the land keeps its memories. Storms carve them deeper, roots wrap around them, and time forgets until someone listens again. The Goins Hollow story may be a cautionary tale about isolation, or an undiscovered natural phenomenon. But one fact remains. The recordings persist. They have never stopped. We began this investigation looking for ghosts. What we found was a rhythm older than the house, older than the family, something woven into the earth itself. Maybe it isn't a curse. Maybe it's the mountain remembering the people who once lived upon it. If you ever stand on that ridge and feel the ground move, don't panic. Just listen. Because somewhere beneath your feet, the Goins still hum, and the earth hums back.